Welcome to the Centerville City Council meeting being held on November 15th, 2022. We welcome those that are attending both in person and maybe joining us on Zoom as well too. Let's start by doing a roll call with our council members to make sure that we have a quorum here.
Meekum present?
Hens present.
Summer Hayes present.
Hurst present.
McEwen present.
All 5 council members present, so thank you council members for being here as well. And thank you staff for being here as well too, and all the work that you've done in putting this meeting together. So let's start with the legislative prayer thought by Councilman McEwen.
Well, we've come through another election season. And this one has been as vitriolic and hateful as many have been in the past, but nothing new has happened there. Some great words that have been thrown around are autocracy and fascism and the decline of our democracy. Well, we made it through. We moved on, and people are now elected into office. So the process of democracy continues. In the election process, though, there are some things that are rather unique about what happens in Davis County. In Davis County, when you open your ballot, there tends to be no selection available. All of your offices are picked by caucus. So when you look at the result of your ballot at the end, the voting is 100% for the individual standing for office. That only happens in Davis County and banana republics. And as such, I think it's time that we start to look very carefully about who we're disenfranchising and the voices that we disenfranchise. Even inside a single party system, there are multiple choices that people would like to make. But when the choice is made by a caucus and not by the individual votes, then you disenfranchise people. The remedy for that is not to throw away the caucus system. It's not to throw away party representation, but it is to present the idea of ranked choice voting so that individuals have the ability in the community to vote for the person that they think would be best for that office. Now, does that mean that the primary vote will go to that individual that the caucus thought would be the best person to represent you? Potentially. But at least you register all of the votes and all of the dissenting viewpoints. And that's the point of democracy, is making sure that we have the ability to have all voices heard. To those of you who voted, thank you. You now have the opportunity to complain to your government. To those of you who didn't, try again next time, and maybe your voice will be heard in a ranked choice voting system.
Thank you. Okay, if you'd all rise with me and repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on the agenda is the open session. Now, I want to bring up that we do have 3 public hearings. A public hearing on the 500 East Center Street property, public hearing on a remnant property, 173 North, 100 East, and a public hearing on the Parish Creek subdivision, lots 1, 3, and 4. So the public will have an opportunity to get up and talk about each one of those individually. So yeah, you don't necessarily need to do that in this open session. This open session would be for anything else that may be on your mind. Anybody that chooses to participate, we just ask that you give your name and where you're from for the record. So that open session is now available to share what might be on your mind. Try and keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. Anything online? Seeing no comments on just the general open session, we will move on our agenda. First thing on the agenda is a recognition. We have had someone in our community serving on a board for uh, 26 years, and that person is Dee Hansen, and he's here tonight with his wife Linda. And I don't know if he knows it, but we have a little plaque that he's already seen, and this is from the South Davis Sewer District, saying that it honored Dee Hansen in sincere appreciation for 26 years of outstanding service as a Centerville City representative on the South Davis Sewer District Board of Trustees, 1996 to 2002. Dee, we'd like you to come up, and you can bring Linda too if you want, and maybe share with us, and Linda, maybe you can share as well too, the highlight of being on the.
I thought you were going to say like, show the crowd.
You know,
I was going to say something else, but that probably.
Mr. Mayor, I could start on that and go on for hours. I'll try not to do
Yeah,
that.
there you go. Share the highlights, and I guess share the whatever Councilman Summerhays says as well too, of those 26 years.
First, let me express my deep appreciation to the city council, the many mayors that I've served under, the city councils I've served with as I represented this wonderful city. I've been proud to be part of it, and I am certainly honored that you have let me serve for that many years, and I hope I've been a benefit to the city as well. Let me cover a couple of things. South Davis Sewer District has had the lowest treatment rates of a mechanical system. Now, if you have a lagoon system, they can be a little cheaper because there's nothing there hardly, except you put it in a pond and it does its thing. But in a mechanical system like we've had, we have for 28 years didn't raise the rates. And I know recently we've taken a little heat because we've raised some rates, and a lot of other people have too, and we're sorry about that. But the reason some of that a good share of it comes about because of the requirements from the federal government passed down through the State Department of Water Quality. They have, as the requirements get more stringent and more stringent, we have to treat differently. And, the fact that we discharged into the Great Salt Lake, where you can argue whether that was beneficial or not beneficial to have that water treated so well, but that doesn't make any difference to EPA. EPA says you can do it, so you ought to. That was causing some of the problems we've had. The other thing that we decided to do that we felt like was a tremendous benefit was we entered into treating food waste. And that's had some ups and downs, but it is taken in hundreds of tons of food waste that would have otherwise gone into the landfill and been buried. It's been being turned into natural gas, and it's green gas because it's renewable. It's highly sought after in California. They're willing to pay a premium for green gas, and so the gas that, and I say we, I will separate myself from the district eventually, but we have green gas because it's renewable. We're pumping it into the pipeline, and we may all get some of that, doesn't matter, but the credits go into the pipeline. And so California, primarily California, has been willing to pay a premium for those decatherms of gas. So it's highly sought after. It's ideal for the fact that it's renewable. Now, that isn't to say we haven't had some ups and downs. Some of you have been out there, and Mayor I know has been out there and seen the facilities. And one thing we did not anticipate as we started taking in food waste was the packaging. We get semi-loads of milk on pallets in cartons, and they all have to be uncartoned and dumped. And we didn't, maybe we should have anticipated that, but we didn't. and soda pop, outdated soda pop comes in by the semi-loads. That all has to be, in that case, plastic bottles can be crushed. We put it in a crusher. And then the plastic goes back to Swires, Coca-Cola, and Pepsi and others. So then that plastic is recycled. And I found out recently it's made into shirts that the missionaries like to buy. I didn't believe that. My grandson said, "Oh yeah, it really will hold water." He went and got a cup of water and dumped it in his pocket. It sat there. It didn't leak. So, and they do up wonderfully well. They look like they've been freshly ironed, and so there's some things that are occurring from recycling. I won't want to waste all the time on that. Another thing that we went into was algae treatment. We discovered or was sold a bill of goods that you could treat the effluent waters, put it into a deal, treat it with ultraviolet light, and it would produce algae that is highly marketable for fish food and other things. It's high in omega-3s. We've had some difficulty in that, and right now we're redesigning that, and so I won't talk much about that because I feel bad that we've had trouble. The food waste is going. We're injecting gas into the system. That was a little slow because we bought what they call a gas skid. It's the pump that pressurized the gas to put it into the main lines. And it came out of Holland. It was a German design. It came out of Holland. It was an absolute mess, unfortunately. Everybody said it was good, but we've had to completely rebuild it, and so that slowed us down a little bit. Anyway, I think that's enough. I could go on, and I won't because you'll shut me off or start throwing at me. So I just express my appreciation to each of you for the opportunity to have served. I'm a civil engineer, registered professional civil engineer. I think that's been a benefit to the sewer district because while I don't know all the different bugs and things that treat the wastewater, I understand a good share of what we did, and I think that was beneficial being there and representing the city and the sewer district. We are still, by the way, even with our rate increases, we are still, if not the lowest, very near the lowest, even with our rate increases for sewer treatment. And Gina told me once, as long as I push that little handle, it disappears. I'm happy. And I think many people are, but nobody likes rate increases. I don't like rate increases, but thank you so much. I appreciate you very much, Mayor and City Council members and staff. You've all been wonderful to work for.
Thank you, Dave. And Linda, thanks for your support and all those years behind him too, and missing trips or whatever because he was attending a board meeting. So thank you for your service. It's quite commendable. 26 years. We really appreciate it. Thanks so much. All right, let's go to the business items. The first item we had is this is a public hearing. Transfer of the Gap property, 500 East Center. Let's get a little introduction to it. Is it Lisa? Is that you or?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, our first item is a public hearing to potentially transfer property to the adjoining property owners, the Bradshaws and DeGrays. So you'll see this is what we're calling remnant or gap parcel due to the street vacation back in 1947. So if you can look in here, and maybe Jennifer will take the mouse there, this entire line down there, you can see we have, in 1947, the city vacated what was 650 East, now referred to as 500 East. And over time, in the 40s and 50s, 33 feet of that property was given by quitclaim deed to the adjacent property owners under the reversionary interest doctrine. And you'll see there's one last sliver of no man's land right where the mouse is, because in the 1950s or so, the adjacent properties were deeded to the abutting property owners, but only at 24 feet rather than 33 feet, because I suspect it was a survey error, assuming that the street was dedicated as a 49 or 50-foot right-of-way, when in reality, these north-south streets were dedicated by Townsite Act as 66-foot right-of-ways. So there's this gap, and in discussing this matter with the Davis County Recorder's Office, they said, yeah, this is a gap. No one owns the land, so there's no name to it on the county records, but they do recommend that since it was originally right-of-way in Centerville's name under the Townsite dedication, that we quitclaim whatever we may own. That's what a quitclaim deed is, saying if we own anything, if we have any ownership interest in this land, we deed it to these adjacent property owners. So we're recommending we do that. Back in 2007, we did something very similar with the Fishers. There was a gap, and they realized it when they wanted to put up their fence or something, and so we initiated this process and deeded the property. And so under this reversionary interest doctrine, we essentially deed it to the center of the right-of-way to the abutting property owners. So under this scenario, each property owner would get approximately 8 feet, 8.25 feet to each property owner. So staff is recommending that you approve this and authorize the mayor to sign these quitclaim deeds dedicating this gap property to the abutting property owners. Now, as we've been discussing, in terms of whether the city is required or should obtain compensation, adequate compensation for this dedication, in my opinion, this street was never created as, it was never developed as a road, and likely, given the time that it was vacated, that all of these pieces were just given without compensation, and I think that's the similar process that should occur here, without compensation under the reversionary interests obtained by the abutting property owners. So it is listed as a public hearing, and I've been dealing quite a bit with Scott Bradshaw, but we've never met. Okay, Scott's here, and also the DeGrays, I'm assuming, are here. So it is a public hearing, and so they could probably speak during the public hearing if they'd like.
Okay, questions for Lisa from council at all?
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second?
I have a motion and a second of the public hearing. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the public hearing is now open. This is just on this matter. This is the, that our city attorney just addressed, the transfer of the gap property at 500 East Center Street. Anyone that can come to the microphone and address this matter.
Do we need to say something?
If you'd like to, now's your opportunity. You don't have to, but you're welcome to. Yeah.
I'll just introduce myself real quick. I am Scott Bradshaw. I'm the property to the east side. Just wanted to introduce myself to the council. And then my neighbors, the DeGrays, on the west side.
Thank you, Scott.
But just out of curiosity, could you come back for a second?
Yeah.
Have you been using that property during the intervening years, or is it just sitting there growing weeds?
It's a little of both. There's been a little bit of weed growing there, a little bit of tree growing there. There's been two fences between our two properties, and there's always been kind of a gap between those two fences, which is how we noticed the problem to begin with. So,
Just curious.
Thank you, interesting.
Thanks.
Close the public hearing.
Second?
The motion to close and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so the public hearing is now closed, so, is there any further questions of staff at all?
I'll make a motion to approve conveyance of the Gap property by quitclaim deed to the Bradshaws and the DeGrays, and authorize the mayor to sign the quitclaim deeds for recording.
Second.
Have a motion, a second, further discussion? Do a roll call vote, we'll start with Councilman Ince and come to the right.
Aye.
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 That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, let's go to the second item on our business items agenda. This is also a public hearing matter. This is a transfer of remnant property at 173 North, 100 East. Lisa, you want to address that one?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a similar request, but slightly different and slightly more complicated. The previous one was a gap, and no one owned it. This issue is a request to transfer what I'm calling a remnant parcel, because it's actually in the city's name and ownership with a parcel ID number. So the Phillips, Grant and Yvonne Phillips, have requested the city to transfer ownership of this parcel immediately in front of their property, and it's at 1173 North. And so you'll see just in front of their property, there's a 21-foot wide piece of property there in the city's name. Now, this came about because back in 1988 and 1987, the city approved 2 ordinances to vacate that west side of 100 East. So we vacated approximately 21.5 feet of right-of-way. And over time, you'll see at 141 North, that was owned by the Browns at the time, and the Browns purchased their piece that was previously right-of-way, because at the time, back in the 80s, the understanding of the law at the time was if the city vacated right-of-way that we obtained under the Federal Town Site Act through our town site survey, that we owned the underlying fee. And so when we vacated the right-of-way, we could sell that. So we sold that middle piece to the Browns for $850. We offered it to the property owners, the previous property owners of the Phillips and also the Smiths, and at that time, they didn't want to buy it. So that was in 1987, 1988. And then in 1997, the city did deed or approved deeding the 21.5 feet to the Smiths that's on the corner there at 75 East. So we quitclaimed that property to the Smiths, or at least we approved it in 1997, and we didn't require any compensation because it was transferred pursuant to a settlement agreement, because we were arguing about property lines back then. But the legal advice back then as well was, wait a minute, the case law has changed, and actually we don't own the underlying fee, we only own it in trust, and so we don't think we can require compensation. So here we are, 2020, case law has changed again. So we had the most recent case in 2000 that said if a city vacates land that they own or obtain through the Townsite Act, it depends on whether they can obtain compensation or not for that property. Generally, you would have to prove that the road was built and no one was occupying the adjacent property, and or we obtained a deed way back when. There was a process in place under the Townsite Act that the city could obtain a deed, but I was unable to find anything in the records showing that we owned a deed. It just shows that we own it by Townsite Act dedication, and also it's unclear, and there is some evidence in the record that, you know, people were already occupying this land. So it's my recommendation at this point in time, given the current case law, that the city transfer ownership of this piece of property that was previously vacated right-of-way to the Phillips without compensation under the reversionary doctrine, which we just talked about, which means if a city vacates a right-of-way, it just reverts to the adjacent property owner upon that vacation, unless we can prove we own it in fee simple by deed, or we owned all of that property under some of the more recent case law, which is another reason we may be able to get compensation. But at this point, in my opinion, given the case law and the lack of evidence that, whether, given the occupancy back in the 1800s, it's my recommendation that we transfer ownership of this piece of property, this remnant parcel, to the Phillips without compensation.
Thanks, Lisa.
So I should have asked this question on the last one, but I'll ask it because they're still here and probably want to know the same answer I do, is that when we do a quitclaim, they need to reapply to adjust their lot lines with the county or the city? How does that recording work to make that remnant parcel disappear?
So we're recommending a quitclaim deed, and the quitclaim deed says that it needs to be combined with their existing parcel ID. So if we went back to that, remember, you could see on the map, they were still existing little slivers, but they have the same tax ID as the adjacent property. If they want to erase that line, they'd essentially have to create a
Assemblage.
plat or a single lot plat, but generally it just is included within that, and so they can't sell it separately. It's now one parcel. Just because we're all really interested in this, but the courts actually say if there's reversionary interest existing, a quitclaim deed isn't even necessary because by law, it automatically reverts upon vacation. But I think that creates confusion, and so there's no harm in quitclaiming. Now, in this case.
It would create confusion in the chain of title, is what
Yeah,
you're saying,
yes,
because they
you know.
wouldn't know to include that meets and bounds description, that legal description within the APN.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but that's the court. So as a city attorney, I think that the quitclaim deed is an appropriate way to reflect on the record that we're transferring this. But this one particularly, since it occurred, it was vacated clear back in the 80s and probably 1988. And we've been owning it for all that time. We certainly need the quitclaim deed.
I'm fine with the quitclaim. I'm just looking at it in terms of like, yeah, there's history behind it, but does that history need to carry forward into the future? Can't we just make it go away? And from a property owner perspective, I think it's kind of weird to say, hey, I have this piece and I got this little sliver right here when you're doing the legal description. It seems to be better if you could fix the box, but.
Yeah, but interesting, you'll see that we also vacated a street to the north, and it's still just in a box.
Right.
So
It just strikes me
unfortunately,
as
those boxes.
weird that the box exists so that legally it doesn't exist anymore in the same way. It's just point of clarification.
Yeah.
So Lisa, they're not required, what you're saying, to go back and assemble that or do a lot line adjustment by eliminating the lot line. The county does that for them, or they just have the same APN number on both parcels?
They just have the same parcel number.
Yeah.
So we've used this quitclaim deed with, right in the quitclaim deed, you'll see that it says the above described property shall be combined with
Okay.
parcel number.
Got it.
So that they cannot sell it separately. Otherwise, that would be deemed a subdivision.
Correct.
Which would be illegal without city
Yeah,
approval.
that'd be a legal subdivision. Yeah.
So any questions? Because it is an interesting area of law that has developed over time, and it appears that, sometimes we've been inconsistent, but each time, the legal advice that the city has received has been consistent with the case law at the time. But we've had case law in 1975, 1994, and 2000 on this issue. So that's why it has developed over time with different, developing opinions on whether the city needs to obtain compensation or not. And obviously in the 40s and 50s, yeah, on 500 East, we didn't require any compensation either.
Motion to open the public hearing?
Second.
Have a motion and a second, public hearing, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
This is, public hearing is now open on the matter of the transfer of remnant property in 173 North, 100 East. Anybody that comes up to make a comment, to just identify yourself and where you're from. anybody online trying to get in?
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
The motion closed, and which has been seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Okay, the public hearing is now closed, so this matter then, if there's any further
Do
questions.
we need a motion to approve your signature of the quitclaim deed?
Yes.
Yes.
Make a motion that we approve the mayor's signature on the quitclaim deed as outlined by the previous discussion.
I'll second that.
We have a motion, a second, further discussion? If not, let's do a roll call vote, starting with Councilman Summerhouse going to the right.
Aye.
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 That motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Let's go to item number 3. This is a public hearing matter as well, a little different in nature than the last two. This is going to be a public hearing on the Parish Creek subdivision plat amendment, lots 1, 3, and 4 in the Parish Creek Business Park. Staff, Corey, will you introduce this to us and the public?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This hopefully is not foreign to you. This is the last step of the project, the Parish Creek subdivision, which is just at the end of 1275. As you head up over the Bridge of Legacy, you'll see the black and white buildings on the right or to the east. It's that project. They came back several months ago, amended their PDO plan, and part of that is to combine some lots together and keep them in common so that they can have storage and parking areas for all of the tenant spaces for the existing building, and then there's a new proposed building to the north that'll share with the lot. So we're combining, there was originally 4 lots. We'll keep lot 2, and we'll combine it from 1, 3, and 4. And so you'll have 2 buildings and associated parking and storage on the larger lot. The last step in that process was for them to receive the plat amendment to combine those parcels. So that's what's being presented to you, is combining those 3 lots. What's additional in your plat amendment ordinance is there is lot line adjustments to combine lots, and then there are vacation of any streets or easements. We're in the section 2 of the subdivision ordinance where we're combining or changing the lot lines, and we're also altering the easements. And you'll see in a condition of the staff report to make sure the city engineer takes a look at that, and that we have the right entities owning those easements approving the alteration, simply because the new building will occupy a portion of those easements. In response to the staff report, I did get another email from the applicant showing that they're indeed having a small alteration on the far north end of those easements. I'm not suggesting you change the conditions of approval because it's not been reviewed by the city engineer. We did receive a letter from the sewer district that owns a line into that they want to preserve their sewer line that's applicable to that building that will be constructed. And so we just need the city engineer to look over those easements and make sure that they're correct in relationship to the construction of the new building. Why that's important is because there is, on a plat, it's a good cause to have a plat, and we've been through the process to show that we're altering it. But the second part with the infrastructure is anybody going to be materially injured? And so that's why the easements are very important, because we have a city water line in that area, we have a sewer trunk line in that area, and we also have the extension access originally for the fire lane that was supposed to go through that area. But since that time, the fire district has taken a different take on the development and has reduced if you recall in the amendment, they've reduced the allowable building size in that north property. So we just need to make sure those easements are correct. We need to have our city engineer review the plat in the paper form, and then I call out some conditions that if it's approved by the city council, goes through the checks with the city attorney and engineers that we've got it lined up correctly, then they would come back in with their recorded linen, take that to the city recorder, City recorder would obtain the necessary signatures on top of the owner's dedication, and then we could record it. So we believe it meets the criteria. We just need a few technical tie-ups before they print the linen for recording. So we're recommending approval.
So we just have to go to the planning commission?
No, plat amendments are solely the city council.
Further questions for Corey before I give the applicant a chance to present? Applicant, do you have anything to present? No? Okay. Great, then let's go, I will look for a motion to go to a public hearing on this matter.
Motion to open the public hearing on this Parish Creek subdivision amendment.
Second.
We have a motion second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the public hearing is now open. This is, like Councilman Ince said, the Parish Creek subdivision plat amendment, which Corey just talked about. Just if you come and comment, once again, just identify yourself and where you're from. Seeing no comments, both here or online, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Great, any further questions for staff, for the applicant, from council? If not, then I'll look for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to, sorry, let me make sure I get this right. Motion to approve the plat amendment for the Parish Creek subdivision, subject to conditions 1 through 5 in the staff report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote on this. Let's go to, start with Councilwoman Hurst going to the right.
Aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0, unanimous. Thank you. All right, let's go to item number 4, the CDBG grant application. This is on ADA pedestrian ramps. Lisa?
We have Jacob Smith online unless you
Oh,
want to
Jacob?
take it.
Jacob's handling it? Okay.
Would you want to take that? Jacob attended the meeting this morning.
Yes, and if Mark is here, Mark, is that you, I see?
Yeah, Mark's here as well, too.
Yeah, Mark, why don't you come up to the podium too, because Mark's really the point on this. I just went to the meeting this morning, just kind of explain a little bit. We're applying for this grant, the Community Development Block Grant, and the application is for $150,000 to improve some ADA ramps, and Mark can talk about that a little bit more. But this is a formality. That's a part of the requirement for the grant application is we need to have support from the legislative body, mainly because there is a match part of this. And so it's really obligating that match if this grant is approved. But I'll turn it over to Mark to kind of explain a little bit what we're doing.
So, in the last few years, we've used the CDBG grant money to replace ADA ramps on our upcoming road projects, and it's been very beneficial to have the additional funds. There's been years where it's been up to 10% of our road monies. So it's a beneficial program for us to try and use.
What percentage of the cost did you say it covered? 10%?
10%. Some years it's covered up to 10%. And with the road projects, it's required that they be brought up to the current 80. So we have to do them.
Which seems to change annually at this point, right?
How many do we have that are not up to standard?
Right around 500.
That many?
We have just over 1,000 in the city. I just have a request, when we're putting them in, try and find the material that's least slick when they're wet. I think they don't think about it because they got the little bumps, but when all of that freezes over, those little bumps are really slippery. We really don't want 'em.
Yeah, and we've actually looked
Falling
into
over.
that, and the truncated dome is the only option at this point.
Is there, I mean, it has to meet an ADA standard, so do
Yes.
you have a choice?
I just know the one where my crosswalk is, it freezes and it is just slick as can be. I mean, because it's plastic and so I guess it's.
They're
plastic.
fiberglass.
Fiberglass, whatever they are. When they're frozen, they're really slick.
Is that part of the ADA requirements,
Yes.
is the fiberglass?
So nothing we can do.
Yeah.
Be careful and use lots of salt.
Has anybody brought that to their attention and said, hey,
I have council member,
What's her name? Go ahead, go ahead.
Jake, this is your fault. We'll talk about this later.
That's right.
She brought it up, was it 2 winters ago? And we'd done some digging and some looking, and the truncated dome is our option. So,
Yeah, our one and only, right?
one and only.
Yeah.
but is that a state?
It's a federal
It's a
standard.
Federal?
standard.
Yeah,
Maybe I need to go to Washington.
do it.
So do we have any areas where we're going to be replacing ramps they were the prior standard? Because we had a couple of resident complaints on 400 West. They're like, you guys just did these ramps and now you're ripping them up again. And they were really upset, not understanding there's a difference in standards on these. Do you see that happening again? And if so, do we have any education pieces we can point people towards to help them understand that? Or do we just stick them on grant again, which I was fine with,
Which happened.
which did happen. But I would have preferred to just say, hey, look, what was in there was not compliant with the standard. Here's why we're doing that. Just a really quick elevator pitch, paragraph thing that we can tell people why we're doing that. Because I fielded more than one call on that, and it was that was the issue, is they felt that we'd just done that a year or two ago, and they were pretty upset.
Yeah, yeah, and we can work on putting some together.
That'd be great. I think we'd all love to be armed with that, just in case we get that call.
Okay. Yeah. Good?
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jake. I don't think there's any further questions. What we're looking for on this, the recommendation is approve resolution 2022-27 supporting this ADA pedestrian ramp project.
Make a motion to approve resolution 2022-27, authorizing submittal of an application for this 2022 CDBG grant to fund improvements to ADA pedestrian ramps.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote. Let's go, Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
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 That motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, other staff, for your work on this.
Thanks, Mark.
Yes, thank you.
So, all right, we got 2 items on our summary action calendar. One is consider the purchase of a 2022 926 MCAT wheel loader from Wheeler Machinery. The other is consider Rocky Mountain Monument and Vault Corp contract to build a niche wall. We have Mark here. If you have any questions for Mark on the cat wheel loader and the niche wall, that's what we discussed in our work session previously. Questions for them on these items?
Councilmember Summerhays, 1,800 under budget.
Yep, I already got it. Thank
Okay.
you. But it's in my notes. And 2,500 on the niche wall.
Yes.
Thank you. But where's the tracking on it?
Yeah.
He's got it on his
Leaving
iPhone.
that for you.
Yeah, I know he is.
So considering you'd mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about the niche wall, do we just split this into 2 motions? Is that the recommendation? or-
Well, I don't know, all I'm saying for the niche wall, let's wait till an upcoming city council meeting
Okay.
to have the definition of resident, because I think that's going to differ, so let's wait
So
for a
are we
work
gonna, yeah,
session.
we're gonna hold off on that.
Yeah, hold off till a
correct?
work
Yeah, we don't
session,
wanna
so we can
approve
vet out
something
some of those previous conversations
Yeah.
as well.
So we're looking for just a approval on the cat wheel loader purchase then?
No, I think you do both.
But yeah, we
Well,
can do.
we're
we
just
can
gonna have a
approve it.
separate discussion about the niche wall.
No,
No, I thought you were
that's-
saying
yeah,
putting
future
off
work
the
session.
second one.
So approve both those two items, the summary action calendar. We're going to discuss the residency stuff and the fee schedule at an upcoming city council.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve the vehicle purchase of a cat wheel loader in the amount of $164,090, and also the purchase of a niche wall, the Rocky Mountain Monument and Vault niche wall contract in the amount of $27,500.
So this is this the second niche wall that we're approving?
Yeah, one of
Yes.
This is the one on Freedom Hill.
For Freedom Hills.
Oh, okay, okay.
For the veterans.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Councilwoman Beacom.
Aye.
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 That motion for those two summary action items passes 5-0. All right, let's go to the minutes review and approval. We have the November 1st, 2022 work session minutes and the November 1st, 2022 city council minutes. Any changes to those minutes? Speak now, otherwise look for a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to accept the minutes as recorded.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to accept the minutes. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Let's go to item number H with the, with Dee Hanson stepping down, who we honored tonight. We have an opening on the South Davis Sewer District Board. This board is made up of 5 cities with 2 elected people, as well too, and so each city appoints someone to that board. I have brought to you the name of Gina Hurst as an appointment to the new member of the South Davis Sewer District Board.
I have a question. Gina, are you going to give us 26 years?
That's a really good question.
I mean, I'll throw my support if you're saying you're up for 26.
I'll give it my best.
I say you've got some pretty big shoes to fill,
Yeah,
so.
that's a little scary, right?
Gina, with population increase, you'll even have to deal with more crap than your dad.
That's a resolution, by the way, because that's what the South Davis Sewer Board, District Board requires. So we're looking to approve Resolution 2022-28.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2022-28.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, the sewer board will be thrilled because I was out of town, a meeting, and another meeting, we didn't meet, so they were thrilled to get somebody on it. So Councilwoman Hurst, you can get going on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Financial report. This is the October report. We usually just have the presentation and questions on a quarterly basis. So this is the 10th month. And so you're welcome to ask. We have Nate here. Any questions from the finances? But he doesn't do a presentation when it's not a quarterly report. Any questions from what you've reviewed on the financial report? Nate, is there anything that we need to know? I don't want to limit it just because it's quarterly. If there's something of importance that you want to bring out. Okay. All right. If there's no further questions or no questions on the financial report for October, then let's move to what we rotate with our council people. For the public's knowledge, those that are here for the first time, each one of us serve on 2 or 3 different boards or committees as mayor and as council people. And so when we have a council member report, on their particular area that they're over at these meetings. And this meeting is Councilwoman Hurst. We also allow other council members, if there's something that is pressing that on boards that they're over, to comment as well too. But specifically, this meeting is Councilwoman Hurst.
Thank you, Mayor. Quickly, the Parks and Rec Committee has not met for a few months, so I don't have anything to report there. Dual Creek Irrigation Company closed down their system at the end of September. They were able to conserve several hundred acre feet of water that will stay in the reservoirs and be used for next year. They did not have any major issues with their shutdown. We did discuss a little bit secondary meters. They're working to get half of those delivered by July 2023 and hoping for the other half in January 2024. There's no guarantees on that. There's a production issue with meters of that type. I think we've discussed this before as a council, that they use the same type of meter as the culinary system uses. So, but Robert did mention that they are putting another plant into production. So he does not anticipate that there will be a problem with using the grant money before it expires in 2026. The Board of Water Resources is also going through a third round on this $250 million that was set aside for secondary meters. When this was initially approved in May, Dual Creek received about 58% of the cost of installing the meters, about $5 million. They're going to go back through another round. Apparently not all of the $250 million has been given out, and so that will increase the cost of the amount of the grant and reduce the cost of the loan. So that's good news, but we don't have the exact numbers on that. I might just mention, in the last couple of weeks, we've had our UDOT EIS, the 30-day comment period has begun. I think it's great that Bryce has got that up on Facebook but we do need to be encouraging residents to get in and look at that. UDOT has done a really amazing job of making it really easy to drop in comments, and I would suggest that we also not just comment for just Centerville, but we need to look at the Farmington options. I think those could have some impact on Centerville. They're looking at a SPUI at Glover's Lane versus keeping the exit at 200, is that 200 West in Farmington, the one just beyond Glover's Lane? Yeah. And then also, I attended the Wasatch Front Regional Council Transportation Workshop yesterday. Becky Wright from the Planning Commission was also there. We have a public comment period on that until December 5th. And the reason I'm bringing these up is because this work on the UDOT EIS impacts our roads for the next 20 to 30 years. The WFRC workshop impacts more internally what happens in the city, active transportation plan, and roads. And so I think it's really important that we all make an effort to get on and make comments, but also make sure we're encouraging residents to get on and make those comments. I think UDOT is making pretty good efforts to get better east to west connectivity, and so I think that those are things that we definitely want to weigh in on. If anyone wants the links, I think we got this, the EIS for I-15 at our last city council, but I've got the links for the Wasatch Front if anyone would like those. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hurst, and yes, I agree with you that as residents and council members that these items that deal with our highways and our roads and the expansion of the freeway and off-ramp obviously is very critical. And so these opportunities to have a voice and express our voices is very critical, so thank you. Anybody else in any of your committees have anything that's critical that we know right now?
Gina, just on the Dual Creek, did they give you any more direction on allowing
yes.
the Trails Committee to
Yes.
improve their erosion problem?
Yes, so they have, their insurance policy does not allow recreation on their property. So they will allow the trail to stay in place, but no improvements is the answer that I got back on that. So,
When you said that they saved, I don't remember how many acre feet of water that would be used in the future, how does that happen? Because they drain the reservoir over the winter.
this isn't that it was saved in the Jewel Creek Reservoir. This is that it's in the Weber Basin Reservoir's storage system.
And it's not necessarily our water. I mean, we didn't use it, so it's
We have
there.
it by contract, but I think it's an annual thing. So just what he's saying when he said that is, we conserved more water than we were allowed by contract this year, even with the reductions that were required. So our community did a good job of being careful with water use. And so we just didn't use everything that we have by contract. The season is over. Had the water system stayed open longer, we would have probably used all of our allotted amount, but it starts over next year, so. So it's not that we got to keep it for another year, it's just generally speaking, Weber Basin had saved some water.
And we couldn't have used it and kept it on longer because Weber Basin wasn't providing it to us down there, Aqueduct. So we couldn't have said, well, we've still got this, we're gonna let people water another 2 weeks because Weber Basin shut their water ducts up.
So it is not absolutely pertaining to that, but I forwarded to basically everyone at the table a couple of weeks ago comments by a person on the tree board who is very conscious of water utilization, encouraging us to take a more aggressive stance at enforcing it. And I have mixed emotions, but I do think it's something that we ought to discuss early on coming into next year, obviously subject to what the winter does. But this person has been very insistent on the fact that I'm not doing more to stop people from dramatically overwatering, in his opinion.
But you have to remember, we can only do for people that water with city water. We have no say. We can't go out and get mad at somebody that's watering with Dual Creek water. That's not our business.
The primary ones he's
but
been citing are city water.
And so
He's
as long as
talking
they're
about
city
our
water-
city water,
And
and there
it's on
are
the
some
west side.
very good solutions that we can work on too, that don't necessarily require enforcement other than the mighty dollar speaking. And we can provide enough water within at a reasonable overage amount for indoor, and then once we get to outdoor use, we can bump it at when they become at the wasteful stage.
Well,
And I think
I
that's
just think we
something
need to talk
can-
about it and look at it. And
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know how, like I say, I've received comments from 2 or 3 people. One person is extremely insistent.
It frankly does need to be looked at.
Okay.
Just like we did last year, we do intend on having a meeting, again, based on how the winter is with some, Weber Basin's pretty good about giving us some indication about what the usage will be early on, and based on that, we need to have that conversation on how we address the water, and particularly the city water and the impact it has on the aquifer, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hope. Mayor's report. I have 2 items. The first item, we are in mid-November. I would imagine that you would all be in favor of getting our representatives, our state representative and our 2 state senators in as soon as possible to discuss things that are coming up in the session. And so I would encourage you to submit questions and concerns and items that you'd like to see that affect our city, that we can take to those I've got our state representative and our 2 state senators. Along those lines as well too, as y'all know, that there's the League of City and Towns has a weekly meeting up at the state capitol that we have 3 voting members. That has been myself, Brant, and Councilman Ince. And I have not talked with Brant or Councilman Ince yet as far as what your commitment there is and if you're available there. We will have a meeting in mid-December with the league to overview, and then of course the weekly meeting either in person or by Zoom up at the Capitol. And that's, as we get into it, as you know, that's always a moving target as well too, because we can get some kind of feel of bills in advance that affect cities and towns, but then they're always changing on the fly as well too. So I would encourage you to get that list of questions to us, and we'll get some time set up with our state representative and our 2 state senators. And then also throughout the session as well too, as we get notifications out to you to contact them as bills are looking for votes. I know you're always good about doing that as well too. So that's right around the corner. We are November 15th. So any questions on that before I go to the second item?
Are you going to invite both the incoming and outgoing representative?
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I was going to definitely invite the incoming, but the outgoing's still in office if we're doing it before.
He probably is more
1st
current on the
January.
things that are happening.
Probably a helpful handoff if nothing else.
You know, I'd imagine that the 2 of those
I'm
will
not sure,
spend time,
yeah.
but I don't
So
know.
Paul and Tim would be chatting a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. So Brant, we'll find a time that invite him in. Okay. Thank you, good suggestion. Anything else on that? The other thing I would just bring up with you is we had an unfortunate accident a week ago, Wednesday, in our community where a pedestrian was hit. That pedestrian's in critical condition. The family is a member of our community. And I would just
How's
say,
she doing?
have your thoughts and prayers with them.
They're going to turn off life support.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. So, anyway, those are always difficult. Our police handled it really well. Of all our officers and our chief, very caring as well too. Do more than just their jobs, and they did a great job with it. But that's difficult. So, just have them in your thoughts and prayers, and whatever else you may feel you can do to help out. That's all I had. City manager report.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just have 2 items. The first is a reminder of the Festival of Lights on Monday, November 28th at 6 p.m. at William R. Smith Park. So I'd encourage all of you and our community to attend. I think Bryce and the Parks and Rec crew do a pretty good job with that event. It was pretty fun last year, so looking forward to it again. So yeah, November 28th at 6 p.m. at William R. Smith Park. And then the second item, just make you aware, I attended a training last week, a pretty intensive training on cybersecurity. It's probably one of the most intense trainings I've attended, again, because it's outside of my scope in my profession, but it was highly valuable in helping me understand a little bit more of the IT world and what questions to ask in areas that we need to improve, and what to look for. So again, it was just a great experience. We had blue team, red team exercises, and I was part of the red team where we essentially tried to hack a system. And so again, there's just some items that we need to be aware of, and I'd like to actually go into a closed session to discuss some of this more. So I'm proposing going into a closed session just for a brief moment to go into a little bit more detail about that training. So, but any questions for me beyond that?
So about 2 years ago, we had a fairly significant event that essentially covered the Whitaker. Have we had any more significant events?
We'll discuss that in the closed session.
Brent, could we also, just for 1 minute, add to the closed session discussion of real estate?
If you'd like.
If that's okay with the council?
The purchase or sale?
Purchase or sale, thank you. Thank you.
So we have Lisa. Keep us up. So that's all I have unless there's other questions for me.
Wasn't there one, we did those property cleanups? I thought there was one more that needed to be done.
There's one more, well, it's under review. We have one more item that will be under review, but not yet.
Okay, I guess
Property.
I thought with what we had done last session that we'd essentially gotten there.
No, not yet.
Okay.
Well, then I would motion that we adjourn the regular city council meeting to convene a closed session for the legal purposes of the acquisition of real property and for the discussion of deployment of security personnel or devices as allowed by law, with no intent to return to public session.
Second?
Motion is second, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Council's closed.